March 15th, 2022, 1:30 meeting of the Borger City Council. Chair recognizes the presence of a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for the invocation by Councilman Perez.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father God, we just come before you today and we just want to give you thanks. And we just want to give you praise for all that you do, for all that you've done and all that you continue to do, Father, in our lives individually and corporately, Lord, and even as a city, Lord. And Father, I just thank you not only for the council, but I thank you for the leadership of this city, Lord. Father, I believe that you're giving them visions that you have for your plans and your purposes, not only for the city, but for the people and for the land. So, Father, I just ask that you would continue blessing us, Lord, that you would continue giving us your thoughts and your plans, Lord, so that it may be glorious and that it can glorify you. I ask, Father, that you bless our citizens. I ask, Father, that you just continue to bless those in authority. And, Father, we just give you all the praise and all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. At this time, we'll take questions or comments from citizens. I see none. We'll move on to item 5, a proclamation designating April 2022 as Fair Housing Month in the city of Borger. Proclamation, whereas Title 8 of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended, prohibits discrimination in housing and declares it a national policy to provide, within constitutional limits, fair housing in the United States. And whereas the principle of fair housing is not only national law and national policy, but a fundamental human concept and entitlement for all Americans. And whereas the National Fair Housing Law during the month of April provides an opportunity for all Americans to recognize the complete success and the goal of equal housing opportunity can only be accomplished with the help and cooperation of all Americans. Now, therefore, by virtue of the authority invested in me as Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Borger, on behalf of the entire council, I, Milton Newley, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Fair Housing Month. Furthermore, I urge all citizens of Borger to become aware of and support fair housing law. In witness thereof, I have therefore set my hand and caused the seal of the City of Borger to be affixed to this 15th day of March 2022. All right. Consent agenda. Items 7, 8, 9, and 10.
6 real quick.
Oh, 6, I'm sorry.
Unless you don't want to listen to
No,
me.
I do. I'm a little rusty. We will do item 6.
Well, I know I sometimes get a little wordy too, so I wouldn't be offended if you wanted to skip it, but
No.
there is quite a few things going on, and so like normal, I kind of start with a little recap of our finances a month again afterwards from our last one. So the general fund, we continue to have our revenues over expenditures, which is actually quite good this time of the year. We normally dip a little bit into the negative while we wait for the industrial district. After all the taxes start, property tax comes in, and before we start getting our industrial district money in the summer. So we're doing quite well with that. Our revenues remain above the 5-year average, and our expenditures remain below the 5-year average. And of course, I keep mentioning that a lot of that is driven by open positions that we're still trying to fill, but we are starting to make some progress with that. I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through each department. Sales tax remains up. It's above our budgeted amount and above the 5-year average. So through February, the fiscal year to date, sales tax revenue is up 15.1% from last year. For the calendar year to date, we're up 17.2%. The inflationary rate during that period is 9%, so we're still, I do think inflation's driving a portion of that increase. However, our increase is above the inflationary level, so that does show strength in economic spending, outside of the inflation as well. In water or sewer, we have a revenue and expenditures are above the 5-year average. And we talk about that a lot. A lot of our expenditures in water and sewer are directly related to the amount of water we produce. So as we sell more water, it costs more electricity to run the pumps. It costs more chlorine to treat the pumps. but revenue still remains over expenditures, so while we're above the average, we're still doing well, and we'll talk about why that's important as we get into water and sewer. We've got a few things to talk about there. However, our expenditures, while they are above the 5-year average, they are below our budgeted amount, so we're still doing quite well maintaining our expenditures there. Phillips 66 has taken 75% of their budgeted revenue already this year, and we're at the 50% mark, so that's a big portion of that revenue above, and Nutrien is 5% over our budgeted amount there. In hotel occupancy, we remain to be above the 5-year average and above our budgeted collection amounts. The venue tax is actually 11% above what we budgeted and is necessary for the venue tax payment. So again, that's very positive for the Dome project. That will allow us to build up some revenue to cover any years where we might be a little short and reduce the amount on our operations there. So all the departments are below their budgeted expenditures except admin and the golf course. The reason for that, administration, we bought the new election equipment, so that's a one-time lump sum, that took us up a little bit. Of course, that will even out as we go through the rest of the year. And a good chunk of that cost is being reimbursed by the other taxing entities that we have our joint election with, so there will be revenue to offset that. And again, at the golf course, we replaced the roof on the clubhouse earlier this year, and so that was a budget expense, but of course that comes out in one big chunk instead of monthly. So with projects, I do just kind of want to remind everybody that we do have our community concert back again this year at the Dome. That's scheduled for April 30th. The Dome will not be open likely by April 30th. This is an outdoor concert, and we'll be able to support it in the parking lot in some areas there and use some of the power, but I think the Dome will be close, but we are still trying to plan a separate ribbon cutting grand opening for the Dome, probably, hopefully sometime in May. There are a few things that we'll talk about when we talk about the Dome that are holding that up. But Aaron Watson is the headliner for that event, and then we have the band Monarch and Chad Miller as the opening acts for that. Marissa and Nicole have been working hard. They've secured a little over $30,000 in sponsorship commitments. So with that, we are going to be able to have fireworks at the event again this year. So I know a lot of people should be happy about that, and of course we're very excited about that. We had lots of good feedback during our last concert with the fireworks and everything, so we're definitely excited to start having a community event again after the pandemic. So talking about the Dome project, it is progressing along the new schedule. There are a few things that the chandeliers and the ballroom are not in yet. And so they're trying to find out if they've shipped or not. Of course, we have some delays coming with the chairs. They're in a container, hopefully on their way here. We'll still progressing with that. But other than that, most everything is in. The Dome ceiling, they did run out of the insulation panel. And so they're having to fill in about a third of it with drywall until the new insulation panel comes in. But that is 17 weeks out.
Wow, okay.
So the drywall will at least give it'll look finished, but the full acoustical properties and the full insulation properties won't be there till we're able to get that foam insulation installed at a later date. But I have taken the video. We'll have a new video update out on Facebook and on the website probably later this week. This will likely be the last video update we do. It's getting close enough to being complete that I want to give everybody a little carrot and a little reason to come see it and a little bit to be surprised once it's finished. I don't want to, give out all the secrets, but I know y'all have seen it and it's, coming along very
looking
nice.
good, yeah.
I'm very excited.
Very much.
So you will see that the contractor and the developer has started work on the Roosevelt Street extension at Roosevelt and West Wilson. They're doing the final compaction on the base. I expect the pavement to go in probably next week. Of course, this is not our project. It will become our road once it is done, but the developer is responsible for doing it now. You actually have two contractors out there. The state contractor is back on site, and so they've done the sidewalk and the curb that attach to the state right-of-way and go to the back of the state right-of-way, and that is tied to the streetlight project. So that's the first step to do that. They will be doing some reconfiguration of the intersection, but I expect work to begin on that stoplight in the next week or two as well. So that stoplight is finally getting close to going in. So I think we ended up timing that pretty good. I was worried that HTO might open before the stoplight was up and functional, which would make that an interesting intersection, even more interesting than it already is. But it does look like that'll probably be in place about the same time, so that'll be good.
Does TxDOT have an estimate on when the street light will be up?
Their contractor has got to finish the stoplight in Pampa. It's part of, they do their traffic lights are part of a district-wide traffic light bid package that's
Okay,
done on a bid
so
package.
it's not in their control.
A little bit. From what I understand, they do have the equipment now finally, and that was the one that was holding up the Pampa one as well, because stoplights, every traffic light is specifically engineered for that intersection. There is not a standard. It's not like you can call up and say, I need a 30-foot pole with a 25-foot arm. You have to send in the specifications, and they are designed and manufactured to that specification, because every intersection is technically a little different. And so and then COVID delays on top of that, but it is coming. They do have, like I said, they'll have to change the concrete medians a little bit before they do that, and they're coordinating, I think, 3 different subcontractors to make that happen. What's out there now is the concrete subcontractor, then you've got Siemens, which is the traffic light contractor on the signs, but then you'll also have a striping contractor that will have to redo the lane markings as well. And with Roosevelt Street, the EDC is also, Rice, who's doing Roosevelt, is also doing Prospect Drive, which is the first 700 feet of the business park. And so they're doing that at the same time, so that one's getting close to being done, and once that is completed, we'll be accepting that, and that will become a city street as well. So those are kind of nice projects, because those streets will hit our fixed assets, but we won't have spent the whole cost. So we actually get a little bit bigger bump to our financials when we take those new public infrastructure. And the same thing will happen with the Tractor Supply on all the utilities that we'll talk a little bit later when we get to that item in the agenda. 10th Street, we are progressing with the 10th Street reconstruction. We've got tentative approval from TxDOT to replace the angled parking. We've been working on that because TxDOT standards generally don't allow angled parking. And so we knew that would be a problem there along 10th Street. So they've given us they're actually being pretty, I think, rational on that. And they said, well, since you're spending all the money, we don't really care what you do, which I think is a very reasonable thought, coming from the state. And sometimes, you don't always get reasonable answers from the state. So I'm at least excited about that, so that maybe I won't be hung from a streetlight somewhere anytime soon. But we've got the initial layout. We'll be looking at that next week before we go into full design. We're still hoping to have that bid and a date to start sometime late in the summer. The parking lot, we've repaved the cross streets now, and those are back open. The alley has been paved. However, the grade was off a little bit right there behind Borger Fitness Club, so there's about a 5-inch gap, so the contractor is going to have to come back and work on that. We hope to have that done soon. And I'm going to let Marissa click her little button over there so you can kind of see this too. And in addition to the get this working over here. In addition to the downtown grant that we've got all those things going on today, we have pretty much received notice that our parks grant is in funding range. It's really just waiting approval on the Parks Commission down in Austin, which is scheduled for next week, or maybe it's scheduled. Without looking at my calendar, I can't say. But if you recall, that's going to replace the play equipment in Huber Park. And so it's a $400,000 project, and the grant is 50% matching, so that'll be a $200,000 grant, and then we'll match the $200,000. What we are planning is an inclusive play set, and then the new pour and play safety surface throughout that main play area. So no more sand. We'll have that nice safety surface like at Keeler and at Buena Vista Park now. And so this is just, if you recall, this is kind of what was set up. So we've got the main play area plus some kind of musical type creative, mind-engaging stations to, bring out creativity in youngsters.
Yeah.
Depending on who you are and how loud they get with them, you may or may not like it, but I think the kids will definitely enjoy it. There's kind of...
So is this special needs friendly also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can, from back here, you can kind of see the wide
I thought
wheelchair
so, but
accessible
yeah, just wanted to
access
make
points.
sure.
And it's got like 2 layers over here, you know, so there are some areas that are for the, you know, capable kids, but there are some that meet all needs. And of course, with the safety surface, you'll be able to roll out, you know, that's another reason for having that kind of asphalt rubberized surfaces. It'll be clear through all that. But I think the little musical area is kind of cool. You've got the little Buddy Holly glasses there, kind of atop in it. So it gives a few more little things. And then the swing set over there, it's got 3 sections. So it's got the far side's kind of a disc one, and that's for your more restricted kids. Then you've got regular swing sets in the middle, and then the last 2 are kind of harnesses. And so that depends on your size. For littler kids, you know, you put them in there and strap them in there, or, you know, if you don't have full capacity, they can be secured in there and swing too. And so the little round thing you see up there too, that is an accessible kind of merry-go-round type thing, so you can get kids of all levels into that. So we're definitely excited about bringing kind of a new fully accessible play set to our primary, you know, premier park. And this is good. As you see, it's all there together. There's no separate areas. You're not separating the kids, you know, so kids of all capabilities can interact together. So we're definitely very excited about that, and I think that's good news. And there again, 50 cents on the dollar for the city's participation, so that'll definitely be good.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the reasons we are successful in getting grant funding is because of our plans that were pretty expensive.
Right, you get extra points for having an acceptable parks, trails, and recreation master plan that we did through Kinder Keys as part of our comprehensive process. That plan addition, I think, added about $80,000 to our total contract with that, and it just got us $200,000. So if you look at it that way,
That's awesome.
we're still money to the good.
Yeah.
And then that does make sure that everything we're doing is in a planned, strategic process and not just kind of random. So I'm definitely excited about that. You know, hopefully we can get that pretty soon. I don't think it'll probably be well after summer, but that will be good. So you can go back to your regular screen now if you'd like. So some real quick updates from the departments. Office of Emergency Management continues to work on the radio CAD project. We have a tentative go live date on the new public safety radio system on April 12th. So,
Question on that. I was just in a water department vehicle and they have radios. Are they going to be on the new system or are they going to stay on an old system?
they will be staying on an old VHF system. Most of them are using their cell phones now anyway.
Okay, I
So-
was just curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So they're keeping, and they're getting some of the hand-me-down public safety radios and stuff that will work on the mutual aid frequencies and some of those other things. So, you know, there's some benefit to them, but mostly, you know, depending on how it is, they've gotten away from a lot of that,
Okay.
you know. The CAD is still progressing. You know, that was part of the first round of COVID release money, and that is the computer-aided dispatch system, so that's going to increase our capabilities and tracking and officer safety. That's looking for a late August go-live date. The city is in the middle of our annual cybersecurity training for all employees that operate computers, and the council will be going through that at our next work session. So, you know, I know we're all super excited about that, but we also have firsthand knowledge of why it's kind of important to make sure we stay up on that. And they are continuing to work on some cooperative agreements for hazard mitigation as we work to clear out and work on those areas of the city coming in. Planning development's also been pretty busy. Building Standards has been working on some issues out at the Borger Shopping Plaza. And so that's, we're working through that, hopefully trying to get some cooperation out there. We're still working on replacing the heavy equipment operator for Building Standards.
I noticed they started.
Yeah, Wendell is still working part-time.
Okay.
And so he's coming in and doing some of that while we're doing that search. However, he's about to, the weather's starting to get nice, so I think he's about to go into full retirement mode. And I don't blame him for that. So I think we'll probably get a little use out of him again, maybe back when the winter turns bad. But, you know, we're getting into ideal travel season, and if I had just retired after that many years of service, I think I'd be looking to hit the road during the nice weather season too. So I definitely don't blame him for that. But we're hope to have maybe that position filled, you know, in the next 2 to 4 weeks. But then there is a little bit of a learning curve in there. And so we're working through some. We're talking about maybe going to a smaller roll-off that can be loaded to a trailer that can be hauled with a one-ton truck, which would reduce our need for a CDL. And so I think there could be some benefit in that, so we're working on some ways around that as well. If we get that system, then we have multiple employees that could operate that and help haul things back and forth. It might require more loads, but you'd have more employees that could do it and more trucks that could pull it. So there could definitely be some operational value in that, and we're working through that. They have received and approved the compaction report from Tractor Supply and HTO on their pads, so they've been cleared for actual construction, so you should start seeing foundations and ground up construction going on. Those two areas, and we have also received a public information request on 2 lots, the environmental studies for the lot next to Hampton Inn and the Country Chevrolet used car lot. So that's generally the first step before somebody closes on those, and we do understand that there are some developers interested in that, and we kind of know what they're expecting, but you know, it's still kind of out there, but I do expect some changes to come there. So HR has been working on processing a couple of new hires. We'll talk about that when we get into those departments, and they're of course gearing up for our summer hires. So we're about to start hiring all the seasonal help, both at the youth center and in parks and code enforcement. And Byron has verbally announced his intention to retire April 30th. And so she's been working with Michelle Crump to get her trained up as his replacement. So we're excited to have an internal candidate able to fill in and fill that role. In the police department, their 4 recruits have passed their background and their psychological evaluation. So that's really our last step in getting them accepted into the academy for a May start. So that is getting them a little closer to having 4 more officers on the street, hopefully by end of August.
How many more we need? Is that
3.
okay?
After those
We do
4,
have some other applicants that are already certified.
Okay.
assuming they get through the academy.
So we are making at least headway like that. I know he's got one that's kind of in final stages of hiring, and at least one or two others that are interested in the process. So
Good.
if all goes well, if all 4 recruits get out, I think there is some hope that come August we'll be full strength again. They also have 4 supervisors, 2 corporals, and 2 sergeants that have recently completed their LEADA trilogy. LEADA is the FBI's leadership program. It's a 3-part series. It is very good. And so we're excited to get those. It talks about leadership traits and skills and modern policing, and I have been through 2 LEADA classes, PIO, prior to my movement over here, and one of the trilogies, and Strope's been through the trilogy series as well, and I have not heard of anybody coming back from one that did not get a ton of value out of those, so we're excited about that. They're definitely not the cheapest training, but they are some of the most cost-effective that I've found. They're not cheap, but you get a lot more out of them than a lot. So we're excited about that as we continue to push our supervision and quality of service in the police department. In the fire department, they recently completed the Powder Wildfire Academy, as a cooperation amongst multiple departments, but I had several employees instructed in it, and that kind of started through Borger coordinating some things after the 06 wildfire, so that's really excited. They had firemen from Houston all the way through up to Texarkana come to that, so we're definitely kind of staying out there and part of that. You might have noticed on their Facebook page, we did finally get the new Engine 1 in service this last month. It had been waiting on a deck gun for 7 weeks. But it is now back in service, and we're excited about that. We did finally get the final build, and the clock has started on the new aerial unit. And so it's showing a tentative delivery date of August 10th, 2023. But it is in the work. There too, Captain Walden and Lieutenant Kirk have achieved their Master Firefighter certification in the last month.
Great.
So we're always excited to see that. That's quite an accomplishment. That requires 12 years of active service and at least 60 college credit hours. So we're definitely excited to see some development and investment in our employees in the fire department as well. They went and spoke to the Amarillo Fire Academy to kind of recruit over there, and they have a new certified firefighter that's about to come on, and then they have a new recruit starting. So with that, With the 4 recruits and the new hire that's about to be on, when the recruits complete, they will be at full staff. So we have the hiring process there to complete that up. Hazard mitigation, of course, they're working today on the prescribed burn behind the substance area in the Rock Creek area. And then they have put out notice for the Galahad defensible space and the Broadmoor and Rock Creek areas. So, you know, this is generally the time when we try to do this in between the winter fire season and the summer fire season. And so after all the rain earlier, this time last year, the vegetation and the fuel load's quite high, so we definitely are glad to see that. They've also started prep work on the first phase of the Phillips 66 prescribed burn. Phillips has contracted with us to do that. That's a $100,000 project. And, you know, if you recall, hazard mitigation does do work for hire to help offset their operating cost. So they're progressing with that. They are working, we've actually signed an agreement with the city of Lubbock to do some prescribed burning down around Lake Allen Henry for the city of Lubbock.
Wow.
And so they're definitely getting out there and getting their name known in that too. In Public Works, you will notice that they finished the curb along Gardner Street.
That's
So
good.
they're just waiting for the asphalt to patch that. It's like, and I know I keep saying this, and I'm like a broken record with this, but it amazes me how much new curb improves the look of a street.
Yeah.
They've been working on replacing the sidewalk along the side of Borger Fitness down 5th Street. We had them do that because after we put in the new new parking lot, with all that new sidewalk, that little strip there was quite chewed up and in not good shape. So we're replacing that so that it ties in with the new parking lot and works. Did run into a little bit of a hiccup there, unbeknownst to the city and or the property owner. Their basement extended under the sidewalk.
Say what?
So
You do that.
the jackhammer might have gone into a storage room. And so we are working with them and the city's insurance to take care of that. But
Wow.
some people wonder why we have setbacks and easement requirements, you know, and that's why, you know, we do oftentimes run into some unique situations in downtown, as old as downtown is, and most of those buildings were constructed prior to zoning and land management regulations, so that was, I think, a surprise for all of us, but, you know, something that I just kind of laugh at because it's Borger, and
Jeez.
but, and then once the contractor finishes there, they'll be moving to the Sterling Street area. We're doing some curb along there north of 10th to tie into that as well. The Parks Department, we've ordered a new awning cover for our big tent. In the last couple of years, it has started to get ripped, so they got that ordered. So, you know, we use that at the outdoor events or chamber events or the trash bash, things like that. And then we talked about the Parks Grant and the Service Center is working on prepping the next auction. We did actually, I followed up on some of our light duty vehicles. We actually have 2 light duty vehicles that are probably be delivered in the next couple of weeks. I was kind of surprised with that. If you remember, our initial delivery estimates on those were 270 to 320 days. So we're a little ahead on that, but there are quite a few that will end up being 2023 models and will not be in before the end of the summer. And it is that time to start thinking about that. We will be turning on the Huber Park splash pad May 1st. So believe it or not, I know after the little bit of snow last week, it might be hard to think about that, but March is quickly coming to an end. In the Fire Marshal's office, they've been planning the public safety coverage for the Dome event and working through that. They're also continuing to work on that Project Shield, which is our new PR campaign. If you remember, we talked about doing some of that in-house instead of going through the national programs. That way we have more flexibility on the promotional items we can buy to, you know, educate the kids and fire safety on. Also working on scheduling a training event for next year, and then we have some PIO training planned in the coming weeks for the region. Communication continues to work on the comms plan, the communications plan, and the website redesign. So we've talked about this before, where we should have a kind of a sample idea of what the new look will look like before we start kind of going through that in the next couple of weeks. Of course, in the city secretary's office, she's busy working on elections and getting ready for all of that. Early voting will start April 25th, and then election day is May 7th. So early voting will be here at City Hall like it normally is. And then I will remind everybody again, I know it's a little different because there is a constitutional amendment election. There will be 2 processes going on. So you will have to check in, vote for the city, check in, vote for the constitutional amendments with the county.
So they're separate ballots.
They are separate ballots, separate machines, separate processes, but we will be sharing the same polling places. So you don't have to go to 2 places, but you have to vote twice. And so it's rare for that to happen, but it does every now and then. And so I just kind of want to keep reminding everybody so that they're not completely surprised by that when they show up to vote. In utilities, we continue to work on the 2 new wells at the Northwest well field. We're still waiting on the contractor to drill the test wells. We're hoping in the next 3 weeks for that. We do have the pipe in for a college. We're replacing a line down in the college addition area. We've had some sewer gas issues with how the force main from a lift station backs up into there, so we're going to be separating those. We'll be doing that in-house. We did have another blowout at Nutrien on a segment of line. This was the one section that Nutrien had asked us not to replace because it was very close to the conveyor. And so this was the one section that wasn't repaired in our last repair, so we are hopeful that this will be the last of that. They are also working a major leak in the west wellfield line. So we're gonna end up having to replace 13,000 feet of 10-inch main in the west wellfield, south. It was a spiral welded steel, that it's a pretty old line, but that's gonna be $43,000 in unanticipated expenses. And then well number 19 in the northwest well field, it has a cracked shaft. So we're gonna have to repair that, and then we're also going to order a spare. The repair will eventually be covered by the contractor. It's still under warranty, but that's gonna be about $40,000 for the spare and the repair to that. So when I talked about all that extra revenue coming in into the water sewer fund, it's not exactly extra because there is a lot of cost operating those. However, some of that's just the cost of doing business, and I don't think anything's necessarily out of the normal. We do talk about how we would love to be able to plan our water expenditures a little better, but you know, they're moving parts, and so you can't always anticipate everything.
Never know.
But we are making progress there. But so Bob, what's happened in the last month? I will be working on a budget. You know, we're about halfway through the budget, so probably sometime in April we'll have our budget amendment, and you know, because I'll be amending some of the revenues and some of the expense categories to take care of some of those expenses going forward. But overall, we're in good shape, and I'm continuing being proud of all the work that all the departments and employees are doing. I think we're definitely making progress, and it's, I don't know. I'm excited to see all the changes and progress around town.
Yeah.
It surprises me.
Oh, yeah.
That's good stuff. Yes.
Now, I've got a question on, project on 10. And before we do anything, are we gonna meet with those merchants?
Yes,
Okay.
there will be public engagement,
Okay,
but we're trying to get a more finalized plan, and Park Hill that's part of their contract, is to provide maps and graphics and kind of give everybody an idea of what it'll look like and what some of the options are. And really then the phasing, because like I said, this is a complete redesign, rebuild. And so the elevation will change a little bit. So I mean, it's an extensive project, I think, like y'all are aware, but luckily the right-of-way width is wide enough. We'll be able to have 2 lanes. You'll do half the road at one time, and you'll move both lanes to one half of the roadway. They'll be a little narrow, but then you'll be able to move them back before you finish.
okay.
So it should be limited as it can be. But we are, by adding curb and gutter, it is gonna have to, the elevation's gonna have to change a little bit. But it will also improve a lot of our little drainage issues we have, especially around Hedgecoke and Coble. But no, we do have several. We will individually engage each of the merchants, and then we will have at least one public open house, probably 2 at 2 different times on the same day, so that the businesses or whoever can come to that. But we are working on that. That should probably happen sometime in May.
Okay.
Okay. Move on to consent items 7 through 10. Consent item 7, consider and take appropriate action on the minutes of the work session and regular meeting of March 1st, 2022. Item 8, consider and take appropriate action on expenditures for the first half of March 2022. Item 9, fiscal year-to-date financials. And item 10, consider and take appropriate action to accept or reject all winning bids from the Texas Communities Group online bidding process. Any discussion? No discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve consent items 7 through 10.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Items 11, 12, and 13 on the executive session were originally put up front because the mayor thought she could be here. In courtesy to our audience, we're going to move those and let y'all get out of here and move on to item 14, and we'll come back to those. Item 14, let me catch up on the computer here. Consider and take appropriate action on an amendment to the interlocal contract with the PRPC for administrative services for the City of Borger 2021 Texas Community Development Block Grant Downtown Revitalization Project. Mr. Spradlin.
So, as we've been talking about the last couple times, we did receive the second grant for our downtown project. And so as part of that, now that we're going to carry it through, we need to amend the agreement with PRPC so that they can get paid for their work. Contrary to popular belief, they don't work for free. They do not make a profit, but we do need to compensate their time because that's how the Regional Planning Commission is funded, is through a lot of those reimbursement grants. So if you recall, when we authorized the approval of the grant submission, it was planned that if we were awarded, that we would amend the agreement to allow for their administrative costs to be reimbursed through the grant. So that's all this item does. And Katie Paul with the PRPC is here. If you have any questions, we've done this a lot here lately, so it looks like we're gonna get to do it again with the Parks grant, so.
I don't have any.
Good.
Katie, thank you for all you do for Borger. We appreciate it.
Need to get a
No
motion.
discussion?
No, sir.
Okay. So entertain a motion.
I move to approve amendment number 1 to the February 2nd, 2021 interlocking agreement for grant administration and management service between the Panhandle Region Planning Commission and the City of Borger.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item 15. Consider and take appropriate action on Resolution R-009-22, designating the mayor and the city manager to act as authorized signatories for contractual and environmental documents between the Texas Department of Agriculture and the City of Borger, and to designate the mayor, city manager, and assistant city manager act as authorized signatories for the state of Texas purchase vouchers and requests for payment forms for the 2021 Texas Community Development Block Grant Program. Mr. Spradley.
Again, this is tied to the downtown grant, as is the next item for the final, but this just designates who can sign on behalf of the city, and so this is standard to how we've done with all the grants. So if you have any questions, I or Katie can answer those, but.
Questions, discussion? Nope. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution R-009-22, authorizing signatories for the 2021 Texas Community Block Grant Program.
Second.
Motion's been made and second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item 16. Consider and take appropriate action on Resolution R-010-22, adopting civil rights and associated policies related to the City of Borger's 2021 Texas Community Development Block Grant Downtown Revitalization Project. Mr. Spradling.
And again, as federal funding is used to support this grant, we have to meet the federal requirements that require the adoption of these policies. The city has adopted these again in the past for the previous downtown grant and the previous CDBG grant, and so this will be like the probably 5th time in the last 5 years that we have reaffirmed these same policies. So there's nothing new in here, but I will entertain any questions that you might have.
primarily, this is moved for any citizen if they have a complaint.
With the civil rights
with the
process of
civil
the
right-
grant.
Yeah. Okay.
And so if they think we're being discriminatory in any of our grant practices or contract awards or in outreach or any of that stuff, it outlines the procedure in which they can file a civil rights complaint and the city will address it. And then, of course, that's then tied to the excessive use policy in the police department, which we have adopted before, which the police department's policy has been in place for that for many years, even prior to our requirement for federal funding. And then, our code of conduct. So and the proclamation at the beginning of the meeting was also tied to this as well.
Other discussion?
No, I haven't.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution R-010-22, reaffirming the Citizen Participation Plan and Grievance Procedures, the Excise Force Policy, the Section 504 Policy, and Grievances Procedures, the Code of Conduct Policy, and the Fair Housing Policy.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Item 17, see if I can catch up on my computer here. Receive the annual tourism report from the Borger Chamber of Commerce and take appropriate action on a tourism services contract for the period April 22 through March 2023. Ms. Cates.
Thank you all for having me today. The last time I was here, we were counting off the tails of COVID, so we didn't have a whole lot to report. I'm happy to say this year we were able to provide the hotel occupancy tax to 10 organizations. And by their estimates and their final reports of their projects, we had an estimated 6,572 visitors to Borger or Hutchinson County out Lake Meredith. We estimate that over 10,682 meals were provided or paid for by those guests, and we had 3,065 hotel nights. So I think we did much better than last year after COVID, as I said. But I think I'm more excited to talk about the work that Garrett and I are doing together on the tourism funding that we receive. Garrett has been wonderful to help walk me through the processes, especially with some of the new changes to the use of the hotel occupancy tax. And so Garrett and I have worked together. We are separating our operating fund from the tourism fund, and Garrett did the work, and I'm gonna brag on him. He helped do our budgets and help us work it out so that we're gonna have a most accurate picture of how those funds are used and how they're benefiting the community. We're also gonna take and use some of those funds to really amp up the visitor center that is across the street. We're gonna be doing some new and really nice brochures that promote Borger. We've talked about including the churches, the schools, restaurants, all the things that there are to do in Borger. And then our final step in really promoting the tourism will be for us to redo the Chamber and Visitor Center website. That's going to have an interactive calendar that members of the chamber or the community at large, we're working on inclusiveness for those that aren't members. So they'll be able to log into our system, enter in what their event is, the dates, the times, etc. And anybody else in the community or from out of town that wants to come will be able to get on that website calendar and see what's going on. And then we think it will improve tourism even more. And we hope that with the dome in place, it will encourage people to come over here and rent the dome and then participate in events that we'll all be hosting there. So very excited about the changes. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to work with Garrett and his leadership in helping us with this project. So if y'all have any questions, I'll be glad to answer what I can.
The budget that was included, I think y'all will be a little more familiar in looking at them. It's more what you're used to seeing. And that was kind of the biggest thing. While the chamber's been accounting for their expenditures correctly, they've been budgeting it all together. So it's been kind of hard to see what was operating and what was tourism.
Yes.
So by treating these more as funds, because the council is supposed to specifically approve where their tourism funds are going. And so by having that tourism fund separated, y'all have a better idea of exactly what they're budgeting for those tourism money.
Okay.
And so I think it just gives everybody a more clear picture of where everything is. And so,
We agree with you. Garrett does great stuff.
Yes, yes, it's been a lot of fun. He does all the work, that's what's. No, thank you all
He has
so
high
much.
standards, but that's great.
well, that's some of that, it's like I told her, it's like, if I'm gonna force change, I need to at least take on some of the
some
work,
input,
it's accepted a lot better.
Yes.
And the chamber board's been, it's been exciting for me and for them, I think, to work through it and see the improvements and understand how it is. And going forward, I think the transparency with both the chamber members, the chamber board, and the city will be much improved. We've updated their chart of accounts to reflect the budget. And so it's going to be a lot easier to match, and they've got some really good ideas going forward, with how to maximize the use of those funds and work it for the benefit of everybody. So we're definitely moving in the right path there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank you.
very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I will say that the new contract that's in front of you, which is also reflected in their budget, is the final reduction in the 3-year plan reduction that we use to help offset the debt payment for the dome, which is using most of hotel occupancy's tax. So this is down from $85,000 to $75,000 maximum per year. And so that's the only change in the contract.
Yep.
Okay, that's good.
All right. Other discussion, questions?
No.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to accept the Chamber's annual tourism budget for the period of April 2022 through March 2023, and approve a new tourism services contract for the period April 2022 through March 2023.
I second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? All right, motion carries. All right, item 18. Consider and take appropriate action to approve Resolution R-11-22, authorizing a Chapter 380 program agreement for economic development incentives between the City of Borger and Borger WF LLC Tractor Supply. Mr. Spradley.
So we kind of talked about this over previous months and kind of knew it was coming. So the Tractor Supply location out there on West Wilson is requiring the extension of city utilities. So normally that would be the responsibility of the developer to incur that cost. However, city ordinance allows us to participate if we're requiring them to upsize the utilities in addition to what they would need for just their service. So if you remember a while back, we approved a contract with Park Hill to engineer the entire utility service out there so that it could be able to support future development in that entire area, which included a new lift station. It includes tapping the well line that comes through their property and then connecting it back over to United Express where that water line ends. So that will give us actually a loop. We'll be able to feed water both directions now into that area, which is definitely a benefit to other people outside of Tractor Supply. And then, of course, the lift station and force main will be able to support anything else developed in that area. Downhill, the Roosevelt Street, where we're sitting, Roosevelt Street is kind of where the terrain changes. So east of Roosevelt can still be serviced by the existing lift station, which is down by Ace. But when you get to the other side, everything falls down west. So the nice thing about that is any further development west where we've placed that lift station will be able to feed into that lift station. So that should service that whole area. So because of that, Tractor Supply has asked us to participate in the lift station. And so what they've asked us to do is buy the package lift station, which I think will be less than this. They got their initial request was for a little over $82,000. However, that lift station didn't meet our standards. So I put in a little extra in here so that they could get one that meet our standards. So the maximum here is $110,000. Their bid came in, I believe, at about $105,000. So of course we will pay based on what their actual cost is. Their total capital investment in that project is about $6.5 million. And of that, about $700,000 is the utilities, and they're asking for $110,000 out of us. So that's, I believe, a fair ask for being able to open that entire area up for development.
Okay.
I think that's pretty much it. We will not pay this until we have accepted it. So they have to install all of it, and then you will notice in the back, there are a significant, several pages of our acceptance requirements. They have to provide us all the tests, and they will have to provide us a maintenance bond. So for a 12-month maintenance bond, so if anything fails within that 12 months, you call on that to repair it. So there should be no additional cost onto us. And like we were talking about with the streets, once we accept these will actually hit the assets of the water sewer fund. So we'll spend about $100,000 to gain about $800,000 in assets.
In the back of my mind, I have that sewer capacity is pretty maximized over there. Is that a function of the lift station at Ace, or is that a function of throughput? Or what?
Well, it was, if you remember, we added the new Bulldog lift station, which was the bottleneck on some of that.
Okay.
And so then the bigger problem that we have is across the street. Because when the Hampton Inn was built, they elected not to put in a public lift station, they put in a private lift station.
Okay.
And so I think that's more what you're thinking about, is they've been having issues with that private lift station because they then made an agreement with the church to use that. And then the church sold the lot and they developed Wendy's and Chicken Express, but the agreement that they made on the property, I guess, transferred. And so that, I think, is some of the issues we're having with sewer. We are in some very, very initial discussions with the people that are interested in developing the lot next to the Hampton Inn, and we might participate. They will need a lift station to reach where they need to go, and so we might talk about doing another one like this to help offset that cost a little bit, which then could potentially replace that private lift station and would solve the sewer problems in the triangle between Roosevelt, Wilson, and College. Other questions?
Nope. All right, we're on 18. Any discussion? Nope. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve resolution R-011-22, authorizing the Chapter 380 Economic Incentive Agreement between Borger, WF, LLC, and the City of Borger, and authorize the mayor to execute any and all documentation to effectually the approval.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Motion carries. Item 19.
We have to go back.
Consider and take action, appropriate action to introduce on first reading ordinance O-002-22, amending Article 1-07 fee schedule, adding Article 1.06 Division 6, the Dome Civic and Convention Center, and amending Section 4.02.007 Park Alcohol Permit. Mr. Spradling.
So since the dome is getting close to finally being able to be used, we kind of need to talk about adopting the fees for its use, the policies and procedures for that, and that's kind of what this ordinance does. For 2 months now, we've kind of been reviewing with the council those policies and procedures and fine tuning them in the packet, which is available on the website if anybody wants to see it. We've actually got the pretty manual that Nicole made, which makes it a little easier to read. However, this actually codifies those rules into the code of ordinance to give us a little teeth behind some of the enforcement procedures there, and then the fees. So I'm not going to necessarily go over each fee. Like I said, it is on the website and the packet if people are interested. We'll eventually, once this is adopted, we'll put it out there to where it's easier to see. But with the council's input and our belief, the fees are quite reasonable. We are changing the alcohol permit a little bit with this, and so we've reduced the hours a little bit on when it can be consumed. At the Dome, you used to consume up to 2 a.m., which was the public consumption hours. Now that the facility is a little nicer, we're intending on shutting that off at consumption off at 12. Sell or service off at midnight, with consumption ending at 12:30. And so we figure that most events don't need to go past that, so that changes in there. Even a New Year's Eve party, you can still have your toast at midnight, but then you need to start thinking about, wrapping it up and moving it on. So generally, nothing good happens much after
That's
midnight
right.
anyway. And then we also have changed it back to requiring Borger police officers to provide the security. So after talking with the chief, he was at that work session, we talked about that, so we've put that back in place. They've changed some of their administrative procedures and have a scheduling app now, which will greatly streamline our ability to get those covered. And so we think that that will be better, so that is in there too. I will say the biggest change from any other facility that we're doing will be the requirement for certain events for event insurance. And so this is a way to make sure that we don't have to have a security deposit that's so large that it discourages use. In most instances, event insurance can be achieved cheaper than what we would need to require a security deposit for. The difference is of course, you don't get the insurance premium back, but you're looking at about $350 to $400 for event insurance versus for a really big event, we'd be looking at probably a several $1,000 security deposit to cover this. But so it's a little cheaper on the end user, and then of course, we can get $20,000 to $30,000 of coverage for damages incurred by the event. So I think that that is a win-win, but will be a little different from what people think. In conjunction with this, we also did reduce the maximum daily at the Cofield building by $50, since now that we're gonna have more options with that, we felt it prudent to reduce that cost a little bit now that you've got two different options and nicety levels. So we're trying to make that a little cheaper as well. Other than that, you got any questions for Nicole or for me and any of that? We'd entertain them. Like I said, this is just introducing them. It'll be adopted at our next meeting, and then we'll be able to really kind of answer a bunch of questions for people.
I just want to say with Nicole and her working with you, y'all did such a great job bringing that packet for us to look at with the process. And I know she diligently looked at different event places all around to just get fair, right, good process. So I just say kudos, girl. You did a good job. That's good. Yes.
Other discussion, comments?
Nope.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to introduce on the first reading ordinance O-002-22, amending Article 1-07 fee schedule, adding Article 1.06, Division 6, the Dome Civic and Convention Center, and amending Section 4.02.007, Park Alcohol Permit.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Motion carries. All right, we're going to move back to item 11, executive session. In compliance with Chapter 551 Texas Government Code Open Meetings Law, the council will retire into executive session relative to Section 551.074 personnel matters and Section 551.071 pending or contemplated litigation. A, we're going to discuss the employment, annual evaluation, dismissal, and/or compensation package of the city manager. So at this time, we will retire into executive session. It's 2:28.
It is 2:28.
It's 3:07. We're back into regular session. We've just left executive session where we discuss the employment annual evaluation, dismissal, and/or compensation package of the city manager. So I want to speak to Mr. Spradling. He's done a great job for this city. I know from my perspective, and I think the council, I'll let them speak for themselves, but we couldn't be happier with the way things are going. We're just tickled pink. Garrett has done a great job for this city. Anybody else?
Absolutely, I agree. I agree that he's done a phenomenal job. And
Just keep pushing.
yeah,
Sometimes there are hard decisions to be made, but you have made them. And look, the city's on a good foundation from your predecessor, and you keeping it on that. And we just going in the right direction. We got a bunch of things in the works, and let's finish it.
I agree.
Well, I appreciate it. Like I said, earlier in my report and stuff, I mean, I'm excited to see, all the things happening and all the improvements. And of course, I'm privy to a little more things than some other people, both development-wise and internally. And I'm fairly confident in the improvements and some of the things that are coming, and that the public's going to be really receptive and appreciative of those. Sure that maybe some of the staff is a little disappointed that I'm not getting fired today, but,
They'll be okay. They'll be all right.
As a recap, of course, this is a 6-year recap. When I first came on the city council 6 years ago, it was a lot of discussion about the dirty B and the things that are wrong. And today, when people talk to me, it's like, what restaurant are we getting next? What's going on down here? I've seen the morale change. Of course, you don't get credit for all that.
No.
You get credit for a year of it. So I'm tickled pink with the direction this city's going. And Eddie Edwards has a lot to do with that. And we believe the city's in great hands with Mr. Spradling. He has my full and complete endorsement. Other comments? Okay, item 13, consider take appropriate action on employment evaluation dismissal or compensation package. We stayed with the contract that was previously signed, so I guess there's no technical action there. So we're on to item 20. Consider and take appropriate action to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? All right, we stand adjourned.
Off the record, what's with all the skunks all over the place?
Warm it up.